Hello. Welcome, welcome. It's been a little bit since we've done one of these, hasn't it? Claire! Hello! Thank you for resubscribing for 20 hecking months. Holy hell. Pog indeed. Apologies. I have alerts either turned down or disabled to make sure not to disturb the vibe for this evening. But thank you so much for resubscribing, Claire. That is super appreciated. Good evening to you as well, Song, and hello to you as well, Martimus. Hope everyone is having terrifyingly pleasant time zones, and hope everyone has had a good week. Apologies for the awkward schedule or incomplete schedule this week. A lot of things have been happening on my end. But hopefully by next week we'll be back to a semi-regular streaming schedule. I was waiting for you to appear before I did that. Of course. Of course. Totally understandable. Yeah. It's mainly to make sure the vibe isn't disturbed, because there's always that one person that tends to have troubles reading the room, you know? And God, it's been so long since we last did one of these. I think the last one we did, I think the last horror story ASMR that we did was back in July, I want to say. So it's been a few months. So long, in fact, that I completely forgot what my actual setup was for these little instances. But I was able to figure things out, kind of borrowing the radio stream layout for this, for the purposes of this, because I think it works. I think it works pretty well in this instance. Of course, gotta have everything else in. And I hope everyone is doing well. Let me know if I need to adjust any audio. For example, if the background ambience, for example, needs to be turned up, turned down, however, needs to be fixed. I'm loving the ambience right now. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. Is this the first horror story ASMR that you've attended, Song? I'm trying to remember offhand. I can't recall. Because I know for a number of folk, this is probably their first instance of horror story ASMR. Once before. Okay, I couldn't remember for whatever reason. Everything sounds good. Glad to hear. Glad to hear. So basically, for anyone that is here for the first time, basically how this goes is I have a collection of short horror stories that I read out in the exact kind of tone that you're hearing right now. And I first started this last year, I believe, as an experiment to see how it goes, and people genuinely enjoyed it. And some people even said that they used some of these to fall asleep to, which is a huge compliment. It is a cozy, spooky atmosphere. Perfect. I was trying to see if I could find something to update the background with. Mainly because, well, Corey, if I put Corey against the background, like, let me show you, if I put Corey against the rest of the background, she practically disappears. She practically disappears. So, I'm trying to find a spot to put her at where she is at least visible. Short horror story, American healthcare. And that's the last contribution I make tonight. Oh, American healthcare is truly the most terrifying horror story imaginable. True nightmare fuel. So glad everyone has swung by, and I hope everyone is taking care of themselves. little bit of housekeeping before we get started here. I won't be streaming tomorrow because I will be on a friend's birthday stream. I'll be hanging out with the Valdi. She will be doing a birthday charity stream, raising money for Gamers Outreach. And if you're maybe familiar with them, we were actually doing charity for them earlier in the year, during the summer. Yeah, Claire will be there as well. I'll be taking part later on in the evening. I believe we're going to be playing Pummel Party, which basically makes Mario Party look tame by comparison. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be a lot of yelling. It's going to be a fun time. So be sure to swing on by for that to watch myself and Claire possibly yell a lot at each other. And of course, support Valdi. Came back to streaming after a bit of a hiatus recently, so be sure to give her some support as well. Fun fact, she was actually the first person I ever did a collab with, way back when I first started VTubing. So definitely go ahead and check her out. Oh, Claire, actually, Claire, good idea. I just got an idea. Would you be able to shout out Valdi by any chance? Would you be able to shout out Valdi by any chance, Claire? Just so people know who to follow for tomorrow. While I attend to my own cat. There it is. Oh god, that's all. That is on my face. That is on my face. I did not account for that. I did not account for that. Okay. Let's see if we can adjust that just a wee little bit there. Just a wee little bit. There we go. Just a wee bit. Yeah, we'll move it down there. There we go. That works, and I can always move it back for regular stuff. Thank you for shouting her out, by the way. Thank you for shouting her out. One sec. Let me attend to the actual Corey. Okay. Alright. Cats are all accounted for. There we go. Alright. Let's say we go ahead and get started, shall we? Let's go ahead and get started with our first story of the evening. Oh, before that, Santiago Govi, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the spooky zone. Welcome, welcome. Let's see if I can bump that up just a smidge. There we go. Just so I can still hear a little bit of the alert. That way I don't miss anything. Oh, thank you for the posture check as well. Oh, there we go. Make sure you all stretch as well. Make sure you all stretch those bones. Okay. So, our first story for the evening is a classic called The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. And this was originally published in 1892 and is particularly notable because it shows a good example. It's considered a feminism piece because it shows very good examples of how women were treated back in the time period. It is a very strong commentary piece, and also a very strong piece of horror literature. And so we're gonna use that. We're gonna have that as our opening story. Make sure to get cozy. If the weather in your area permits it, wrap yourselves in a nice comfy blanket. Maybe set a candle or two. Maybe Actually, if you plan on falling asleep, maybe don't light a candle, because you don't want that thing burning while you're not paying attention to it. But get cozy, and let's go ahead and read some stories of terror. It is very seldom that mere ordinary people like John and myself secure ancestral halls for the summer. A colonial mansion, a hereditary estate, I would say a haunted house, and reach the height of romantic felicity, but that would be asking too much of fate. Still, I will proudly declare that there is something queer about it. Else, why should it be let so cheaply? And why have stood so long untenanted? John laughs at me, of course, but one expects that in marriage. John is practical in the extreme. He has no patience in faith, an intense horror of superstition, and he scoffs openly at any talk of things not to be felt and seen and put down in figures. John is a physician, and perhaps, I will not say it to a living soul, of course, but this is dead paper and a great relief to my mind. Perhaps that is one reason I do not get well faster. You see, he does not believe I am sick. And what can one do? If a physician of high standing and one's own husband assures friends and relatives that there is really nothing the matter with one but temporary nervous depression, a slight hysterical tendency, what is one to do? My brother is also a physician and also of high standing, and he says the same thing. So I take phosphates or phosphites, whichever it is, tonics and journeys and air and exercise, and I'm absolutely forbidden to work until I am well again. Personally, I disagree with their ideas. Personally, I believe that congenial work with excitement and change would do me good. But what is one to do? I did write for a while in spite of them, but it does exhaust me a good deal, having to be so sly about it or else meet with heavy opposition. I sometimes fancy that in my condition, if I had less opposition and more society and stimulus, but John says the very worst thing I can do is to think about my condition, and I confess, it always makes me feel bad. So, I will let it alone and talk about the house. The most beautiful place. It is quite alone, standing well back from the road, quite 3 miles from the village. It makes me think of English places that you read about, for there are hedges and walls and gates that lock, and lots of separate little houses for the gardeners and people. There is a delicious garden. I never saw such a garden, large and shady, full of box-bordered paths and lined with long, grape-covered arbors with seats under them. There were greenhouses too, but they are all broken now. There was some legal trouble, I believe. Something about the heirs and co-heirs. Anyhow, the place has been empty for years. That spoils my ghostliness, I am afraid, but I don't care. There is something strange about the house. I can feel it. I even said so to John one moonlight evening, but he said what I felt was a drought and shut the window. I get unreasonably angry with John sometimes. I'm sure I never used to be so sensitive. I think it is due to this nervous condition. But John says if I feel so, I shall neglect proper self-control. So I take pains to control myself. Before him, at least. And that makes me very tired. One sec. Sorry, I had to sneeze. I don't like our room one bit. I wanted one downstairs that opened on the piazza and had roses all over the window and such pretty old-fashioned chintz hangings, but John would not hear of it. He said there was only one window and not room for 2 beds, and no near room for him if he took another. He's very careful and loving, and hardly lets me stir without special direction. I have a scheduled prescription for each hour in the day. He takes all care from me, and so I feel basically ungrateful not to value it more. He said we came here solely on my account, that I was to have perfect rest and all the air I could get. Your exercise depends on your strength, my dear, said he, and your food somewhat on your appetite, but air you can absorb all the time. So we took the nursery at the top of the house. It is a big, airy room, the whole floor nearly, with windows that look all ways at air and sunshine galore. It was nursery first and then playground and gymnasium, I should judge, for the windows are barred for little children, and there are rings and things on the walls. The paint and paper look as if a boys' school had used it. It is stripped off the paper in great patches all around the head of my bed, about as far as I can reach, and in a great place on the other side of the room, low down. I never saw a worse paper in my life. One of those sprawling, flamboyant patterns committing every artistic sin. It is dull enough to confuse the eye in following, pronounced enough to constantly irritate and provoke study, and when you follow the lame, uncertain curves for a little distance, they suddenly commit suicide, plunge off at outrageous angles, destroy themselves in unheard of contradictions. The color is repellent, almost revolting, a smoldering, unclean yellow, strangely faded by the slow turning sunlight. It is a dull, yet lurid orange in some places, a sickly sulfur tint in others. No wonder the children hated it. I should hate it myself if I had to live in this room long. There comes John. I must put this away. He hates to have me write a word. So we already have a very, very strong opening segment. And I agree, I don't think I could be able to reside in a room that had such gaudy and unappealing wallpaper attached to it. We have been here 2 weeks, and I haven't felt like writing before since that first day. I am sitting by the window now, up in this atrocious nursery, and there is nothing to hinder my writing as much as I please, save lack of strength. John is away all day, and even some nights when his cases are serious. I am glad my case is not serious, but these nervous troubles are dreadfully depressing. John does not know how much I really suffer. He knows there is no reason to suffer, and that satisfies him. Of course, it is only nervousness. It does weigh on me, so not to do my duty in any way. I meant to be such a help to John, such a real rest and comfort, and here I am, a comparative burden already. Nobody would believe what an effort it is to do what little I am able, to dress and entertain and order things. It is fortunate Mary is so good with the baby, such a dear baby, and yet I cannot be with them. It makes me so nervous. I suppose John never was nervous in his life. He laughs at me so about this wallpaper. At first, he meant to repaper the room, but afterwards he said that I was letting it get the better of me, and that nothing was worse for a nervous patient than to give way to such fancies. He said that after the wallpaper was changed, it would be the heavy bedstead, and then the barred window, and then that gate at the head of the stairs, and so on. You know the place is doing you good, he said, and really, dear, I don't care to renovate the house just for a 3 months rental. Then do let us go downstairs, I said. There are such pretty rooms there. Then he took me in his arms and called me a blessed little goose, and said he would go down cellar if I wished, and have it whitewashed into the bargain. But he is right enough about the beds and windows and things. It is as airy and comfortable a room as anyone need wish, and of course, I will not be so silly as to make him uncomfortable just for a whim. I'm really getting quite fond of the big room, all but the horrid paper. Out of one window I can see the garden, those mysterious, deep-shaded arbors, the riotous, old-fashioned flowers and bushes and gnarly trees. Out of another, I get a lovely view of the bay and a little private wharf belonging to the estate. There is a beautiful shaded lane that runs down there from the house. I always fancy I see people walking in these numerous paths and arbors, but John has cautioned me not to give way to fancy in the least. He says that with my imaginative power and habit of story-making, a nervous weakness like mine is sure to lead to all manner of excited fancies, and that I ought to use my will and good sense to check the tendency. So I try. I think sometimes that if I were only well enough to write a little, it would relieve the press of ideas and rest me. But I find I get pretty tired when I try. It is so discouraging not to have any advice and companionship about my work. When I get really well, John says we will ask Cousin Henry and Julia down for a long visit. But he says he would as soon put fireworks in my pillowcase as to let me have those stimulating people about now. I wish I could get well faster, but I must not think about that. This paper looks to me as if it knew what a vicious influence it had. There's a recurrent spot where the pattern lolls like a broken neck and two bulbous eyes stare at you upside down. I get positively angry with the impertinence of it and the everlastingness. Up and down and sideways they crawl, and those absurd, unblinking eyes are everywhere. There is one place where two breaths didn't match, and the eyes go all up and down the line, one a little higher than the other. I never saw so much expression in an inanimate thing before. We all know how much expression they have. I used to lie awake as a child and get more entertainment and terror out of blank walls and plain furniture than most children could find in a toy store. I remember what a kindly wink the knobs of our old bureau used to have, and there was one chair that always seemed like a strong friend. I used to feel that if any of the other things looked too fierce, I could always hop into that chair and be safe. The furniture in this room was no worse than inharmonious, however, for we had to bring it all from downstairs. I suppose when this was used as a playroom, they had to take the nursery things out, and no wonder. I never saw such ravages as the children have made here. The wallpaper, as I said before, is torn off in spots, and it sticketh closer than a brother. They must have had perseverance as well as hatred. Then the floor is scratched and gouged and splintered, the plaster itself is dug out here and there, and this great heavy bed, which is all we found in the room, looks as if it had been through the wars. But I don't mind it a bit. Only the paper. There comes John's sister. Such a dear girl as she is, and so careful of me. I must not let her find me writing. She is a perfect and enthusiastic housekeeper, and hopes for no better profession. I verily believe she thinks it is the writing which made me sick, but I can write when she is out, and see her a long way off from these windows. There is one that commands the road, a lovely, shaded, winding road, and one that just looks off over the country. A lovely country, too, full of great elms and velvet meadows. This wallpaper has a kind of sub-pattern in a different shade, a particularly irritating one, for you can only see it in certain lights, and not clearly then. But in the places where it isn't faded, and where the sun is just so, I can see a strange, provoking, formless sort of figure that seems to sulk about behind that silly and conspicuous front design. There's Sister on the stairs. Well, the 4th of July is over. The people are gone, and I am tired out. John thought it might do me good to see a little company, so we just had Mother and Nellie and the children down for a week. Of course, I didn't do a thing. Jenny sees to everything now, but it tired me all the same. John says if I don't pick up faster, he shall send me to Weir Michel in the fall. But I don't want to go there at all. I had a friend who was in his hands once, and she says he is just like John and my brother, only more so. Besides, it is such an undertaking to go so far. I don't feel as if it was worthwhile to turn my hand over for nothing. I'm getting dreadfully fretful and querulous. I cry at nothing and cry most of the time. Of course, I don't when John is here or anybody else, but when
Father,
I'm alone.
what story is this?
Hello, Emma. This story is the Yellow Wallpaper. I actually add a little bit of a text element to help let people know what story we are currently reading. How you doing, by the way? Thank you so much for swinging on by, and I hope you're having a terrifyingly pleasant time zone. Yeah, our first story of the evening is, in fact, the Yellow Wallpaper. So, get comfortable and strap yourself in for some terror. I'm a bit. Okay, I see. I'm a bit EP. How are you? Doing all right. It has been a bit of a hectic week for me, but I am looking forward to the weekend. I am absolutely looking forward to the weekend. And I hope you all are looking forward to your respective weekends as well. Let's see. Here we go. And I am alone a good deal just now. John is kept in town very often by serious cases, and Jenny is good and lets me alone when I want her to. So I walk a little in the garden, or down that lovely lane, sit on the porch under the roses, and lie down up there a good deal. I'm getting really fond of the room in spite of the wallpaper. Perhaps because of the wallpaper. It dwells in my mind so. I lie here on this great immovable bed. It is nailed down, I believe, and follow that pattern about by the hour. It is as good as gymnastics, I assure you. I start, we'll say, at the bottom, down in the corner over there where it has not been touched, and I determine for the 1000th time that I will follow that pointless pattern to some sort of a conclusion. I know a little of the principle of design, and I know this thing was not arranged on any laws of radiation or alternation or repetition or symmetry or anything else that I ever heard of. It is repeated, of course, by the breaths, but not otherwise. Looked at in one way, each breath stands alone, the bloated curves and flourishes, a kind of debased Romanesque with delirium tremens go waddling up and down in isolated columns of fatuity. But on the other hand, they connect diagonally, and the sprawling outlines run off in great slanting waves of optic horror, like a lot of wallowing seaweeds in full chase. The whole thing goes horizontally too, at least it seems so, and I exhaust myself in trying to distinguish the order of its going in that direction. They have used a horizontal breadth for a frieze, and that adds wonderfully to the confusion. There is one end of the room where it is almost intact, and there, when the cross lights fade and the low sun shines directly upon it, I can almost fancy radiation after all. The interminable grotesques seem to form around a common center and rush off in headlong plunges of equal distraction. It makes me tired to follow it. I will take a nap, I guess. A lot of emphasis is being placed on just how overwhelmingly distracting this wallpaper is. The author is definitely going to great lengths to very perfectly describe just how absolutely abysmal this wallpaper is through extreme detail. It's very intriguing. Continuing on. I don't know why I should write this. I don't want to. I don't feel able. And I know John would think it absurd, but I must say what I feel and think in some way. It is such a relief, but the effort is getting to be greater than the relief. Half the time now I am awfully lazy and lie down ever so much. John says I mustn't lose my strength and has me take cod liver oil and lots of tonics and things, to say nothing of ale and wine and rare meats. Dear John, he loves me very dearly and hates to have me sick. I tried to have a real, earnest, reasonable talk with him the other day and tell him how I wish he would let me go and make a visit to Cousin Henry and Julia. But he said I wasn't able to go, nor able to stand it after I got there. And I did not make out a very good case for myself, for I was crying before I had finished. It is getting to be a great effort for me to think straight. Just this nervous weakness, I suppose. And dear John gathered me up in his arms and just carried me upstairs and laid me on the bed and sat by me and read to me till it tired my head. He said I was his darling and his comfort and all he had, and that I must take care of myself for his sake and keep well. He says no one but myself can help me out of it, that I must use my will and self-control and not let any silly fancies run away with me. There's one comfort. The baby is well and happy. It does not have to occupy this nursery with the horrid wallpaper. If we had not used it, that blessed child would have. What a fortunate escape. Why, I wouldn't have a child of mine, an impressionable little thing, live in such a room for worlds. I never thought of it before, but it is lucky that John kept me here after all. I can stand it so much easier than the baby, you see. Of course, I never mention it to them anymore. I'm too wise, but I keep watch of it all the same. There are things in that paper that nobody knows but me, or ever will. Behind that outside pattern, the dim shapes get clearer every day. It is always the same shape, only very numerous. It is like a woman stooping down and creeping about behind that pattern. I don't like it a bit. I wonder. I begin to think. I wish John would take me away from here. It's explaining just how exhausting it is to be stuck in this room. Exactly. If it wasn't just for that wallpaper, it would probably be a lot more manageable, but there's also the fact that the husband is deliberately ignoring any of her requests for any kind of interaction, any kind of stimulation at all. And it's despite the fact that this is all meant to be for her own good, it feels more like she is trapped in a prison. There's a very notable difference in what she wants to do and what her husband, who's supposed to be this physician, wants her to do. As was the style at the time. Yeah, exactly. Fully isolating her, denying her any form of interaction, stimulation, anything. And it's just the complete opposite of what she needs, and she knows this too, but he is denying her all of this because he thinks he knows better. What year does this story take place? The original publication date for this story is 1892, so it very well portrays just how women were treated in that time period, how very few rights they actually had. It's terrifying to think about. Exactly, the hysteria years. Exactly. Moving on. One second. Something to drink besides Irish whiskey. It is so hard to talk with John about my case, because he is so wise and because he loves me so. But I tried it last night. It was moonlight. The moon shines in all around, just as the sun does. I hate to see it sometimes. It creeps so slowly and always comes in by one window or another. John was asleep, and I hated to waken him, so I kept still and watched the moonlight on that undulating wallpaper till I felt creepy. The faint figure behind seemed to shake the pattern, just as if she wanted to get out. I got up softly and went to feel and see if the paper did move, and when I came back, John was awake. "What is it, little girl?" he said. "Don't go walking about like that. You'll get cold." I thought it was a good time to talk, so I told him that I really was not gaining here, and that I wished he would take me away. "Why, darling," said he, "our lease will be up in 3 weeks, and I can't see how to leave before. The repairs are not done at home, and I cannot possibly leave town just now. Of course, if you were in any danger, I could and would, but you really are better, dear, whether you can see it or not. I am a doctor, dear, and I know. You are gaining flesh and color, your appetite is better. I really feel much easier about you." "I don't weigh a bit more," said I, "nor as much. My appetite may be better in the evening when you are here, but it is worse in the morning when you are away." "Bless her little heart," said he with a big hug. "She shall be as sick as she pleases. And now let's improve the shining hours by going to sleep and talk about it in the morning." "And you won't go away?" I asked gloomily. "Why, how can I, dear? It is only 3 weeks more, and then we will take a nice little trip of a few days while Jenny is getting the house ready. Really, dear, you are better." "Better in body, perhaps," I began, and stopped short, for he sat up straight and looked at me with such a stern, reproachful look that I could not say another word. "My darling," said he, "I beg of you, for my sake and our child's sake, as well as for your own, that you will never for one instant let that idea enter your mind. There is nothing so dangerous, so fascinating to a temperament like yours. It is a false and foolish fancy. Can you not trust me as a physician when I tell you so?" So, of course, I said no more on that score, and we went to sleep before long. He thought I was asleep first, but I wasn't. I lay there for hours trying to decide whether that front pattern and the back pattern really did move together or separately. On a pattern like this, by daylight, there is a lack of sequence, a defiance of law that is a constant irritant to a normal mind. The color is hideous enough, and unreliable enough, and infuriating enough, but the pattern is torturing. You think you have mastered it, but just as soon as you get well underway in following, it turns a back somersault, and there you are. It slaps you in the face, knocks you down, and tramples upon you. It is like a bad dream. The outside pattern is a florid arabesque reminding one of a fungus. If you can imagine a toadstool in joints, an interminable string of toadstools budding and sprouting in endless convolutions, why, that is something like it. That is, sometimes. There is one marked peculiarity about this paper, a thing nobody seems to notice but myself, and that is that it changes as the light changes. When the sun shoots in through the east window, I always watch for that first long straight ray. It changes so quickly that I never can quite believe it. That is why I watch it always. By moonlight, the moon shines in all night. When there is a moon, I would know it was the same paper. At night in any kind of light, in twilight, candlelight, lamplight, and worst of all, by moonlight, it becomes bars. The outside pattern, I mean, and the woman behind it is as plain as can be. I didn't realize for a long time what the thing was that showed behind that dim sub-pattern, and now I am quite sure it is a woman. By daylight she is subdued, quiet. I fancy it is the pattern that keeps her so still. It is so puzzling. It keeps me quiet by the hour. I lie down ever so much now. John says it is good for me, and to sleep all I can. Indeed, he started the habit of making me lie down for an hour after each meal. It is a very bad habit, I am convinced, for you see, I don't sleep. And that cultivates deceit, for I don't tell them that I'm awake. Oh no. The fact is, I am getting a little afraid of John. He seems very queer sometimes, and even Jenny has an inexplicable look. It strikes me occasionally, just as a scientific hypothesis, that perhaps it is the paper. I have watched John when he did not know I was looking, and come into the room suddenly on the most innocent excuses, and I've caught him several times looking at the paper, and Jenny too. I caught Jenny with her hand on it once. She didn't know I was in the room. When I asked her in a very quiet voice, with the most restrained manner possible, what she was doing with the paper, she turned around as if she had been caught stealing, and looked quite angry, asked me why I should frighten her so. Then she said that the paper stained everything it touched, that she had found yellow smooches on all my clothes and John's, and she wished we would be more careful. Did that not sound innocent? But I know she was studying that pattern, and I am determined that nobody shall find it out but myself. I didn't know that the prison metaphor was going to hit point blank there. As she was describing the wallpaper turning to appear like bars in the moonlight. Continuing. Life is very much more exciting now than it used to be. You see, I have something more to expect, to look forward to watch. I really do eat better and am more quiet than I was. John is so pleased to see me improve. He laughed a little the other day and said I seemed to be flourishing in spite of my wallpaper. I turned it off with a laugh. I had no intention of telling him it was because of the wallpaper. He would make fun of me. He might even want to take me away. I don't want to leave now until I have found it out. There is a week more, and I think that will be enough. I'm feeling ever so much better. I don't sleep much at night, for it is so interesting to watch developments, but I sleep a good deal in the daytime. In the daytime, it is tiresome and perplexing. There are always new shoots on the fungus and new shades of yellow all over it. I cannot keep count of them, though I have tried conscientiously. It is the strangest yellow, that wallpaper. It makes me think of all the yellow things I ever saw, not beautiful ones like buttercups, but old, foul, bad yellow things. But there is something else about that paper. The smell. I noticed it the moment we came into the room, but with so much air and sun, it was not bad. Now we have a week of fog and rain, and whether the windows are open or not, the smell is here. It creeps all over the house. I find it hovering in the dining room, skulking in the parlor, hiding in the hall, lying in wait for me on the stairs. It gets into my hair. Even when I go to ride, if I turn my head suddenly and surprise it, there is that smell. Such a peculiar odor, too. I've spent hours in trying to analyze it, to find what it smelled like. It's not bad at first, and very gentle, but quite the subtlest, most enduring odor I ever met. In this damp weather, it is awful. I wake up in the night and find it hanging over me. It used to disturb me at first. I thought seriously of burning the house to reach the smell. but now I am used to it. The only thing I can think of is that it is like the color of the paper, a yellow smell. There's a very funny mark on this wall, low down near the mopboard, a streak that runs around the room. It goes behind every piece of furniture except the bed, a long, straight, even smooch, as if it had been rubbed over and over. I wonder how it was done and who did it, and what they did it for. Round and round and round, round and round and round. It makes me dizzy. I really have discovered something at last. Through watching so much at night, when it changes so, I have finally found out. The front pattern does move, and no wonder. The woman behind shakes it. Sometimes I think there are a great many women behind, and sometimes only one, and she crawls around fast, and her crawling shakes it all over. Then, in the very bright spots, she keeps still, and in the very shady spots, she just takes hold of the bars and shakes them hard. And she's all the time trying to climb through, but nobody could climb through that pattern. It strangles so. I think that is why it has so many heads. They get through, and then the pattern strangles them off and turns them upside down and makes their eyes white. If those heads were covered or taken off, it would not be half so bad. Fire Demon Queen Socia, hello. Welcome on in. Hope you are having a terrifyingly pleasant time zone. Hope you are doing well. We're getting right into the crux of our first story of this evening, the Yellow Wallpaper. So feel free to get comfortable and get ready for some terror. I think that woman gets out in the daytime. I'll tell you why. Privately, I've seen her. I can see her out of every one of my windows. It is the same woman I know, for she is always creeping, and most women do not creep by daylight. I see her on that long, shaded lane, creeping up and down. I see her in those dark grape arbors, creeping all around the garden. I see her on that long road under the trees, creeping along. When a carriage comes, she hides under the blackberry vines. I don't blame her a bit. It must be very humiliating to be caught creeping by daylight. I always lock the door when I creep by daylight. I can't do it at night, for I know John would suspect something at once. And John is so queer now that I don't want to irritate him. I wish he would take another room. Besides, I don't want anybody to get that woman out at night but myself. I often wonder if I could see her out of all the windows at once, but turn as fast as I can only see out of one at one time. And though I always see her, she may be able to creep faster than I can turn. I've watched her sometimes away off in the open country, creeping as fast as a cloud shadow in a high wind. If only that top pattern could be gotten off from the under one. I mean to try it, little by little. I have found out another funny thing, but I shan't tell it this time. It does not do to trust people too much. There are only 2 more days to get this paper off, and I believe John is beginning to notice. I don't like the look in his eyes. And I heard him ask Jenny a lot of professional questions about me. She had a very good report to give. She said I slept a good deal in the daytime. John knows I don't sleep very well at night, for all I'm so quiet. He asked me all sorts of questions too, and pretended to be very loving and kind, as if I could see through him. Still, I don't wonder he acts so, sleeping under this paper for 3 months. It only interests me I feel John and Jenny are secretly affected by it. Hurrah! This is the last day, but it is enough. John is to stay in town overnight and won't be out until this evening. Jenny wanted to sleep with me, the sly thing, but I told her I should undoubtedly rest better for a night all alone. That was clever, for really, I wasn't alone a bit. As soon as it was moonlight and that poor thing began to crawl and shake the pattern, I got up and ran to help her. I pulled and she shook. I shook and she pulled, and before morning, we had peeled off yards of that paper.
I am spooked.
Hello, Valdi. It is very spooky indeed. How are you doing? Thank you so much for swinging on by, and I hope you're having a terrifyingly pleasant time zone. I may have mentioned that I'm going to be hanging out with you tomorrow for your birthday charity stream. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to it. I'm not scared.
You should be.
I'm excited. It's a blast hanging out with you. It's been a bit since we last hung out. It's been a bit. Definitely looking forward to it. Definitely looking forward to hanging out with you again. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see. Find my spot. Here we go. And before morning, we had peeled off yards of that paper. A strip about as high as my head and half around the room. And then, when the sun came and that awful pattern began to laugh at me, I declared I would finish it today. We go away tomorrow, and they are moving all my furniture down again to leave things as they were before. Jenny looked at the wall in amazement, but I told her merrily that I did it out of pure spite at that vicious thing. She laughed and said she wouldn't mind doing it herself, but I must not get tired. How she betrayed herself that time. But I'm here, and no person touches this paper but me. Not alive. She tried to get out of the room. It was too patent. But I said it was too quiet and empty and clean now that I believed I would lie down again and sleep while I could, and not to wake me even for dinner. I would call when I woke. So now she is gone, and the servants are gone, and the things are gone, and there is nothing left but that great bedstead nailed down with the canvas mattress we found on it. We shall sleep downstairs tonight and take the boat home tomorrow. I quite enjoy the room. Now it is bare again. How those children did tear about here. This bedstead is fairly gnawed, but I must get to work. I have locked the door and thrown the key down into the front path. I don't want to go out, and I don't want to have anybody come in till John comes. I want to astonish him. I've got a rope up here that even Jenny did not find. If that woman does get out and tries to get away, I can tie her. But I forgot I could not reach far without anything to stand on. This bed will not move. I tried to lift and push it until I was lame, and then I got so angry I bit off a little piece at one corner, but it hurt my teeth. Then I peeled off all the paper I could reach standing on the floor. It sticks horribly and the pattern just enjoys it. All those strangled heads and bulbous eyes and waddling fungus growths just shriek with derision. I am getting angry enough to do something desperate. To jump out of the window would be an admirable exercise, but the bars are too strong even to try. Besides, I wouldn't do it. Of course not. I know well enough that a step like that is improper and might be misconstrued. I don't like to look out of the windows even. There are so many of those creeping women, and they creep so fast. I wonder if they all come out of the wallpaper as I did. I am securely fastened now by my well-hidden rope. You don't get me out in the road there. I suppose I shall have to get back behind the pattern when it comes night, and that is hard. It is so pleasant to be out in this great room and creep around as I please. I don't want to go outside. I won't, even if Jenny asks me to. For outside, you have to creep on the ground, and everything is green instead of yellow. But here, I can creep smoothly on the floor, and my shoulder just fits in that long smooch around the wall, so I cannot lose my way. Why, there's John at the door. It's no use, young man. You can't open it. How he does call and pound. Now he's crying for an axe. It would be a shame to break down that beautiful door. John, dear, said I in the gentlest voice, the key is down by the front steps under a plantain leaf. That silenced him for a few moments. Then he said, very quietly indeed, open the door, my darling. I can't, said I. The key is down by the front door under the plantain leaf. And then I said it again, several times, very gently and slowly, and said it so often that he had to go and see. And he got it, of course, and he came in. He stopped short by the door. What is the matter? He cried. For God's sake, what are you doing? I kept on creeping just the same, but I looked at him over my shoulder. I've got out at last, said I, in spite of you and Jane, and I've pulled off most of the paper so you can't put me back. Now, why should that man have fainted? But he did, and right across my path by the wall, so that I had to creep over him every time. The end. That subtle transition from her being herself still and then gradually dipping further and further and further until she became the very woman that she saw in the wallpaper. The Yellow Wallpaper is one of my favorite horror stories, by the way. It was written so long ago and shows the struggles of womanhood back in 1892. We were actually just talking about that. I mentioned that it was published in 1892, and it's basically went into great detail of how women were treated in that time period. And you got to see that in full display with how her own husband, this supposed great physician, essentially prevented her from getting any kind of stimulation whatsoever. Stuff that probably would have helped her condition. But instead, she was trapped in that room with that awful, awful wallpaper until it eventually drove her mad. Homegirl went nuts. Yeah, it was a good transition, a very subtle transition. You're reading, you're thinking that it's her, but then immediately, and then once it clicks, you realize, oh, she's no longer there. She is no longer there. A very, very good read indeed. And understanding now why this is such a very fascinating and well-known piece of literature and a good display of how depression, mental illness, and things like that affect people in different ways.
Father, can we have Poe's works next? Fall of the House of Usher or The Mask of the Red Death?
Funny you should mention that, actually. I actually do have a Poe work on my list. And I was planning on that to close out the evening. I was actually planning that to close off the evening with. We do have a couple other stories that I have on the docket first, though. But I definitely plan. Last couple times we did this, we've closed off with a Poe story. Edgar Allan Poe is absolutely my favorite horror author. So I have always made sure to have at least one Edgar Allan Poe story on the docket for one of these. Don't know if it was intentional, but I couldn't tell if she had actually been replaced by the Wall Lady or she went insane and began thinking she was the Wall Lady. I really like it. That's actually a good thing to ponder about. Did she essentially switch places with the Wall Lady? Or did she end up starting to think that she was the Wall Lady, creeping about all around where she was able to? That is an interesting thing to ponder about. Which would it be, I wonder? Oh, by the way, hello, Bloody. Sorry, I forgot to say hello to you. How you doing, by the way? Thank you so much for swinging on by, and I hope you're having a terrifyingly pleasant time zone. Welcome, welcome. That was the Yellow Wallpaper. Absolutely terrifying tale. Let's see. A bit longer than I expected, too. A bit longer than I expected. Let's see here. Okay. I got some other short stories. Let's see. I don't believe we have read this one on stream yet. Let's see. It is possible that I might butcher the pronunciation of the name here, but this is a tale called A Ghost by Guy de Maupassant. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation here, so I apologize if I am. And this was translated by M. Charles Sommer. So if anything sounds odd or off, blame Charles. Alright. Let us begin, shall we? We were speaking of sequestration, alluding to a recent lawsuit. It was at the close of a friendly evening in a very old mansion in the Rue de Grenelle, and each of the guests had a story to tell, which he assured us was true. Then the old Marquis de la Tour Samuel, 82 years of age, rose and came forward to lean on the mantelpiece. He told the following story in his slightly quavering voice.
I also have witnessed a strange thing. So strange that it has been the nightmare of my life. It happened 56 years ago, and yet there is not a month when I do not see it again in my dreams. From that day I have borne a mark, a stamp of fear. Do you understand? Yes, for 10 minutes I was prey to a terror, in such a way that ever since a constant dread has remained in my soul. Unexpected sounds chill me to the heart. Objects which I can ill distinguish in the evening, shadows, make me long to flee. I am afraid at night. No, I would not have owned such a thing before reaching my present age. But now I may tell everything. One may fear imaginary dangers at 82 years old, but before annual danger I have never turned back, mes dames. That affair so upset my mind, filled me with such a deep, mysterious unrest that I never could tell it. I kept it in that inmost part That corner where we conceal our sad, our shameful secrets, all the weaknesses of our life which cannot be confessed. This is actually... Sorry, I probably shouldn't be doing that kind of voice. Trying to keep that low tone is actually putting a bit of a strain on me. If no one has any objections, I'll try to read this normally. Let's see, where was I? It's all good. Thank you. Pink Shadows 91. Hello. Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the spooky zone. Welcome, welcome. Here we go. That affair so upset my mind, filled me with such a deep, mysterious unrest that I could never tell it. I kept it in that inmost part, that corner where we conceal our sad, our shameful secrets, all the secrets of our life which cannot be confessed. I will tell you that strange happening just as it took place, with no attempt to explain it. Unless I went mad for one short hour, it must be explainable though. Yet I was not mad, and I will prove it to you. Imagine what you will. Here are the simple facts. It was 1827 in July. I was quartered with my regiment in Rhone. One day, as I was strolling on the quay, I came across a man I believed I recognized, though I could not place him with certainty. I instinctively went more slowly, ready to pause. The stranger saw my impulse, looked at me, and fell into my arms. No worries, Song. Thank you for the lurk. Appreciate it. It was a friend of my younger days, of whom I had been very fond. He seemed to have become half a century older in the 5 years since I had seen him. His hair was white, and he stooped in his walk, as if he were exhausted. He understood my amazement and told me the story of his life. A terrible event had broken him down. He had fallen madly in love with a young girl and married her in a kind of dreamlike ecstasy. After a year of unalloyed bliss and unexhausted passion, she had died suddenly of heart disease, no doubt killed by love itself. He had left the country on the very day of her funeral and had come to live in his hotel at Rouen. He remained there, solitary and desperate, grief slowly mining him, so wretched that he constantly thought of suicide. As I thus came across you again, he said, I shall ask a great favor of you. I want you to go to my chateau and get some papers I urgently need. They are in the writing desk of my room, of our room. I cannot send a servant or a lawyer, as the errand must be kept private. I want absolute silence. I shall give you the key of the room, which I locked carefully myself before leaving, and the key to the writing desk. I shall also give you a note for the gardener, who will let you in. Come to breakfast with me tomorrow, and we'll talk the matter over. I promised to render him that slight service. It would mean but a pleasant excursion for me, his home not being more than 25 miles from Rouen. I could go there in an hour on horseback. At 10 o'clock the next day, I was with him. We breakfasted alone together, yet he did not utter more than 20 words. He asked me to excuse him. I thought that I was going to visit the room where his happiness lay shattered. Upset him, he said. Indeed, he seemed perturbed, worried, as if some mysterious struggle were taking place in his soul. At last, he explained exactly what I was to do. It was very simple. I was to take 2 packages of letters and some papers, locked in the first drawer at the right of the desk, of which I had the key. He added, I need not ask you not to glance at them.
Nightmare Nexus, hello. Thank you so much for the raid. The ghouls invade. How are you doing? Thank you so much for the raid. How are you doing? Oh, thank you for shining the map, Claire. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Oh, I think I actually recognize that art style for that emote. That's a cool little emote. I suppose since Twitch is doubling the amount of animated emotes for both affiliates and partner, I should see about looking into a headbang emote of my own. I've thought about that actually in the past, but I just haven't had the slots. The ghouls invade. Welcome on in. And Brian the Goblin, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the spooky zone. Are we up to demonologist? I actually have. Oh, Pink Shadows. Thank you so much for gifting a sub to Nightmare Nexus. That is super appreciated. Thank you so much. Of course, homie wanted to keep the spooky vibes going. Was supposed to do narration stream tonight, but your boy is sleepy. No worries. No worries. Oh, thank you for the hydrate. Thank you, Brenda Leader, for the hydrate. And, hello! Thank you for resubscribing also. That's super appreciated. Brings back memories, as this was the first type of stream I came into, and I've been here since. Love your content and your community as a whole. Keep up the amazing work. Oh, Panda, you're going to make me cry. You're going to make me cry. Thank you so much for resubscribing through Prime Gaming for 8 months, no less. Getting good use out of those Bezos bucks. Apparently there's a hype train. Apparently there's a hype train now. A hype train coming up during an ASMR stream. Not something I was expecting. Oh, a hype train during a horror story ASMR stream. Amazing. Can we get that going? Can we get that going? That would be amazing. That would be amazing if we could get that hype train going. And Eve the Orphan, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the spooky zone. We're hunting ghosts after my horror talk show. It was a good time. Hey! I actually just started my own little bit of a talk segment as well, earlier this month, called a Graveside Chat. I'm gonna try and see if I can hold another one of those in November. Nightmare Nexus, thank you so much. Thank you so much for gifting a sub to Saris. Thank you so much. And there's the hype train. There's the hype train. Delayed raid message. Oh, how you doing there, Gabriel? Hey, and thank you, Pink, for gifting another sub to Eve the Orphan. Thank you so much. That's super appreciated. You just came in earlier today. And you're already gifting subs. That is super appreciated. Gabriel Gratia, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the spooky zone. Sounds awesome. Wasn't Kiddo on that? Yeah, my first guest was in fact Geronimo Kiddo. I actually have a list of other fellow horror friends that I would love to have on. It is quite a list. Quite a list. I may need to curate a little bit, but definitely have ideas of who I would love to have on for the next episode, but that's probably not going to be until November, depending on how things pan out. Doing just fine. How are you? Doing pretty well. We are in the middle of our second story of the evening, as a matter of fact, called A Ghost. Ooh, spooky. And for people that are here for the first time, This is Horror Story ASMR Evening, where I read a collection of short horror stories in the exact kind of tone you're hearing right now. A number of people seem to really enjoy this, and some people have even said that they use these to fall asleep to, which is why I don't have audio on some of the alerts, because basically trying to avoid anything that interrupts the vibes. I'd be honored if I could sneak on that list. Oh, I will have to keep you in mind. I will absolutely keep you in mind. Horror reads to sleep is preem. Exactly. Oh, there's 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So on the current hype train, we are at level 2. I'll proceed to keep on going, and we'll see how much farther that train goes. Thank you all so much for the support. It is super appreciated, especially with how weird this week has been for streams. Let's see. Oh, there it was. I was almost hurt by his words, and told him so rather sharply. He stammered, "Forgive me, I suffer so much," and tears came to his eyes. I left about 1 o'clock to accomplish my errand. The day was radiant, and I rushed through the meadows, listening to the sound of the larks and the rhythmical beat of my sword on my riding boots. Then I entered the forest and set my horse to walking. Branches of the trees softly caressed my face, and now and then I would catch a leaf between my teeth and bite it with avidity, full of the joy of life, such as fills you without reason, with a tumultuous happiness almost indefinable, a kind of magical strength. As I neared the house, I took out the letter for the gardener, and noted with surprise that it was sealed. I was so amazed and so annoyed that I almost turned back without fulfilling my mission. Then I thought that I should thus display oversensitiveness and bad taste. My friend might have sealed it unconsciously, worried as he was. The manor looked as though it had been deserted the last 20 years. The gate, wide open and rotten, held one wondered how. Grass filled the paths. You could not tell the flower beds from the lawn. At the noise I made kicking a shutter, an old man came out from a side door and was apparently amazed to see me there. I dismounted from my horse and gave him the letter. He read it once or twice, turned it over, looked at me with suspicion, and asks, "Well, what do you want?" I answered sharply, "You must know how it as you must know it as you have read your master's orders. I want to get in the house." He appeared overwhelmed. He said, "So, you are going in his room?" I was getting impatient. "Parbleu, do you intend to question me by chance?" He stammered, "No, monsieur, only it has not been opened since the death. If you will wait 5 minutes, I will go in to see whether—" I interrupted angrily. "See here, are you joking? You can't go in that room as I have the key." He no longer knew what to say. "Then, monsieur, I will show you the way. Show me the stairs and leave me alone. I can find it without your help. But still, monsieur..." Then I lost my temper. "Now be quiet, else you'll be sorry." I roughly pushed him aside and went into the house. I first went through the kitchen, then crossed 2 small rooms occupied by the man and his wife. From there, I stepped into a large hall, went up the stairs, and I recognized the door my friend had described it to me. I opened it with ease and went in. Gonna get some food. No worries, Nightmare. Appreciate the lurk. Be sure to get plenty of nom-noms. Make sure to hydrate as well. Get any stretches in if you need to. Do not neglect post-stream self-care. The room was so dark that at first I could not distinguish anything. I paused, arrested by that moldy and stale odor peculiar to deserted and condemned rooms, of dead rooms. Then gradually my eyes grew accustomed to the gloom, and I saw rather clearly a great room in disorder, a bed without sheets, having still its mattresses and pillows, one of which bore the deep print of an elbow or a head, as if someone had just been resting on it. Eve, thank you for the hydrate. Appreciate it. The chairs seemed all in confusion. I noticed that a door, probably that of a closet, had remained ajar. I first went to the window and opened it to get some light, but the hinges of the outside shutters were so rusted that I could not loosen them. I even tried to break them with my sword, but did not succeed, as those fruitless attempts irritated me, and as my eyes were now adjusted to the dim light, I gave up hope of getting more light and went toward the writing desk. I sat down in an armchair, folded back the top, and opened the drawer. It was full to the edge. I needed but 3 packages, which I knew how to distinguish, and I started looking for them. I was straining my eyes to decipher the inscriptions when I thought I heard, or rather felt, a rustle behind me. I took no notice, thinking a draft had lifted some curtain, but a minute later, another movement, almost indistinct, sent a disagreeable little shiver over my skin. It was so ridiculous to be moved thus, even so slightly, that I would not turn around, being ashamed. I had just discovered the second package I needed, and was on the point of reaching for the third, when a great and sorrowful sigh, close to my shoulder, made me give a mad leap 2 yards away. In my spring, I had turned around, my hand on the hilt of my sword, and surely had I not felt that, I should have fled like a coward. A tall woman dressed in white was facing me, standing behind the chair in which I had sat a second before. Such a shudder ran through me that I almost fell back. Oh, no one who has not felt them can understand those gruesome and ridiculous terrors. The soul melts, your heart seems to stop, your whole body becomes limp as a sponge, and your innermost parts seem collapsing. I do not believe in ghosts, and yet I broke down before the hideous fear of the dead, and I suffered. Oh, I suffered more in a few minutes, in the irresistible anguish of supernatural dread than I have suffered in all the rest of my life. If she had not spoken, I might have died, but she did speak. She spoke in a soft and plaintive voice which set my nerves vibrating. I could not say that I regained my self-control. No, I was past knowing what I did, but the kind of pride I have in me, as well as a military pride, helped me to maintain, almost in spite of myself, an honorable countenance. I was making a pose for myself, and for her, whatever she was, woman or phantom. I realized this later, for at the time of the apparition, I could think of nothing. I was afraid. She said, "Oh, you can be of great help to me, monsieur." I tried to answer, but I was unable to utter one word. A vague sound came from my throat. She continued, "Will you? You can save me, cure me. I suffer terribly. I always suffer. I suffer, oh, I suffer." And she sat down gently in my chair. She looked at me. "Will you?" I nodded my head, being still paralyzed. Then she handed me a woman's comb of tortoiseshell and murmured, "Comb my hair. Oh, comb my hair. That will cure me." Look at my head, how I suffer, and my hair, how it hurts. Her loose hair, very long, very black, it seemed to me, hung over the back of the chair, touching the floor. Why did I do it? Why did I, shivering, accept that comb? And why did I take it between my hands, her long hair, which left on my skin a ghastly impression of cold, as if I had handled serpents? I do not know. That feeling still clings about my fingers, and I shiver when I recall it. I combed her, I handled, I know not how, that hair of ice. I bound and unbound it. I plaited it as one plaits a horse's mane. She sighed, bent her head, seemed happy. Suddenly she said, "Thank you," tore the comb from my hands, and fled through the door which I had noticed was half opened. Left alone, I had for a few seconds the hazy feeling one feels in waking up from a nightmare. Then I recovered myself. I ran to the window and broke the shutters by my furious assault. A stream of light poured in. I rushed to the door through which that being had gone. I found it locked and immovable. Then a fever of flight seized on me. A panic, the true panic of battle. I quickly grasped the 3 packages of letters from the open desk. I crossed the room running. I took the steps of the stairway 4 at a time. I found myself outside. I don't know how. And seeing my horse close by, I mounted in one leap and left at a full gallop. I didn't stop till I reached Rowan and drew up in front of my house. Having thrown the reins to my orderly, I flew to my room and locked myself in to think. Then, for an hour, I asked myself whether I had not been the victim of an hallucination. Certainly, I must have had one of those nervous shocks, one of those brain disorders such as give rise to miracles, to which the supernatural owes its strength. And I had almost concluded that it was a vision, an illusion of my senses, when I came near to the window. My eyes by chance looked down. My tunic was covered with hairs, long woman's hairs which had entangled themselves around the buttons. I took them off one by one and threw them out of the window with trembling fingers. I then called my orderly. I felt too perturbed, too moved to go and see my friend on that day. Besides, I needed to think over what I should tell him. I had his letters delivered to him. He gave us a receipt to the soldier. He inquired after me and was told that I was not well. I had had a sunstroke or something. He seemed distressed. I went to see him the next day, early in the morning, bent on telling him the truth. He had gone out the evening before and had not come back. I returned the same day, but he had not been seen. I waited a week. He did not come back. I notified the police. They searched for him everywhere, but no one could find any trace of his passing or of his retreat. A careful search was made in the deserted manor. No suspicious clue was discovered. There was no sign that a woman had been concealed there. The inquest gave no result, and so the search went no further. And in 56 years I have learned nothing more. I never found out the truth. The end. Interesting little twist there. It was actually really nice. Just braided her hair and made her happy. Yeah. A simple thing that made the ghost possibly helped her to pass on. Or maybe it was just a kind gesture. Maybe it was something, a simple activity that she looked forward to when she was alive. Perhaps. He's also currently trying to get my attention, so let me go ahead and tend to her real fast. Right Oh, there you are. Let me go into the midnight real quick. I think she is trying to get my attention. 1 second. There we go. Apologies. That ghost sounds like me for real, for real. Do you also approach strangers and ask them to brush your hair? One moment. There we go. Had to open a can of tea. Didn't want the sound of the can opening to well, I guess sound bang. It wouldn't be a flash bang. It would be more like a sound bang. But there's got to be a term for that. I'm always wanting my GF to brush and braid my hair at all. And if offered, I will not refuse someone else to do that. Aww. I was actually very curious though. Was one thing I wanted was the friend that he was talking to even there in the first place, or did he just vanish? And what did the documents hide in particular? Was there something sinister in those documents that he was really trying to find? Did he just flee the country? Yeah, there we go. Probably would have been a bit of a jump scare. A son's auditory jump scare. Was the friend a ghost? What if the documents were his death certificates? That is a good question. That is a good question indeed. Especially since they never found any other evidence of him being there at all. Nothing was left behind. As soon as he turned in the papers and the packages, he just disappeared. Something to think about, a fun little thought exercise. I imagine there's a number of theories that you can come up with in terms of how to explain that series of events. Something fun to think about. But I agree. The moment where he's just there brushing the hair of the ghost lady, it's definitely very sweet. Would you brush the hair of a ghost if they asked you to? I imagine it would be a comforting experience, to say the least. Let's see here. Okay. Not gonna lie, if a beautiful ghost with long hair wanted me to brush and braid it, I wouldn't be too shook. Sounds like a nice time. I agree. I very much agree there. Used to have very long hair. Having it brushed is nice. I've never had long hair. I've always had short hair myself. And I feel like my hair growth caps at a certain point. At least that's what it feels like sometimes. I'd be piss poor at it, but I'd try. I think as long as you're willing to try, then that's what matters. Like, the gesture is appreciated more than anything. Mine was 3 feet, now it's 6 inches. Ah, that is very long. Jeez. Yeah, I think the 6 inches is kind of where my hair is at when I put it up into full mohawk. I think that's about where my hair is at currently. Would be a little bit higher. Okay, let's see here. Alright. let's see. What do we have here for the next story? Okay. How are we doing? Doing pretty good in terms of time. We're doing pretty good so far. My hair is long, probably 4 feet at minimum. That is very long. Holy hell. That is very long. Some strands do be approaching that 4.5 length. I can only imagine how long it took to actually get your hair that long. I can only imagine. Jeez, that's gotta take years upon years of just letting it grow out. Man. Over a decade for sure. Yeah, that sounds about right. Sounds about right. What's the longest hair recorded? 17 feet? That's actually a good question. Let me see if I can find that out. Longest hair recorded. Ah, here we go. 18 feet and 5 inches. The current world record holder for the longest hair length is Xi Guiping from China. Interesting. Been growing her hair since the age of 13 for a total of 31 years. Wild. And yeah, they got a photo of her right there. And yeah, that is very, very long. Off to bed though. Chat, behave. I can make no promises. 18 feet, that's my new goal. Let's go. Hell yeah, you can do that. You can do it, Claire. But thank you so much for hanging out. You have a good rest and pleasant nightmares. How? Dedication. I can only imagine that'd be very difficult to have around. Like, imagine trying to walk down the street with hair that long. Can't be easy. Cannot be easy. It's crazy. Let's see. Alright. Interesting. That's a fun little piece of trivia. Fun little piece of trivia. There is a natural... Oh, I guess I forgot to mute the bit audios. I forgot about the bit sound alerts. I forgot about those. Oh, well, thank you, Anonymous, for the biddies. Thank you, Anonymous. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. Hopefully that wasn't too much of a jump scare. I wanted to grow my hair out because of the Sailor Moon hairstyle when I was a kid. Ah, okay. Now I'm happy with the length I have it currently, but I trim it for summer so I don't get overheated. There you go. That's a good way to go about it. That's a good approach. Yeah. Rip EP viewers. Rip all the lurkers. I always forget about the bit redeems. I always forget about those. Oh, man. Okay. Quick stretch. Here we go. Woof. There we go. Alright. We are on our third story of the evening. This one is called... Excuse me. This one is called At the Gate by Mila Jo Klosser from the Century magazine by permission of the Century Company and Mila J. Klosser. Let us begin, shall we? Oh, I should probably update this thing. Let's see. at the gate. Also helps me for time stamping these for the VOD upload later. A shaggy Airedale scented his way along the high road. He had not been there before, but he was guided by the trail of his brethren who had preceded him. He had gone unwillingly upon this journey, yet with the perfect training of dogs, he had accepted it without complaint. The path had been lonely, and his heart would have failed him, traveling as he must without his people, had not these traces of countless dogs before him promised companionship of a sort at the end of the road. The landscape had appeared arid at first, for the translation from recent agony into freedom from pain had been so numbing in its swiftness that it was some time before he could fully appreciate the pleasant dog country through which he was passing. There were woods with leaves upon the ground through which to scurry, long grassy slopes for extended runs, and lakes into which he might plunge for sticks and bring them back to. But he did not complete his thoughts, for the boy was not with him. A little wave of homesickness possessed him. It made his mind easier to see far ahead a great gate as high as the heavens, wide enough for all. He understood that only man built such barriers, and by straining his eyes, he fancied he could discern humans passing through to whatever lay beyond. He broke into a run that he might the more quickly gain this enclosure made beautiful by men and women, but his thoughts outran his pace, and he remembered that he had left the family behind, and again this lovely new compound became not perfect, since it would lack the family. One sec, Midnight is wanting back in. Midnight insists on letting herself back in when she needs to. Yeah, I imagine that's a lot of what's going through that dog's head. What? Oh. Okay. Midnight, are you gonna let me pull my chair back in? No. Corey was in here too, but I think she must have gone back under the bed. There we go. There we go. It is warm in here. It is warm in here. I got the portable AC on, so hopefully the sound from that is not catching into the mic too much. Where was I? Ah, here we go. The scent of the dogs grew very strong now, and coming nearer, he discovered, to his astonishment, that of the myriads of those who had arrived ahead of him, thousands were still gathered on the outside of the portal. They sat in a wide circle spreading out on each side of the entrance, big, little, curly, handsome, mongrel, thoroughbred dogs of every age, complexion, and personality. All were apparently waiting for something, someone, and at the pad of the Arendale's feet on the hard road, they arose and looked in his direction. No AC noises at all. That's good to know. Good to know. Demon Omega, hello. How are you doing? Thank you so much for coming on by. Hope you're having a terrifyingly pleasant time zone. Welcome, welcome. Celebrating your birthday? Well, happy birthday, Demon. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Demon Omega.
Hope you had a good one. Hope that wasn't too terrifying. We're actually just getting started on our third horror story of the evening. So come on in, get comfy, and get ready for a scare. Let's see. Here we are. That the interest passed as soon as they discovered the newcomer to be a dog puzzled him. In his former dwelling place, a four-footed brother was greeted with enthusiasm when he was a friend, with suspicious diplomacy when a stranger, with a sharp reproof when an enemy, but never had he been utterly ignored. He remembered something that he had read many times on great buildings with lofty entrances. Dogs not admitted, the sign had said, and he feared this might be the reason for the waiting circle outside the gate. It might be that this noble portal stood as the dividing line between mere dogs and humans, but he had been a member of the family, romping with them in the living room, sitting at meals with them in the dining room, going upstairs at night with them, and the thought that he was to be kept out would be unendurable. He despised the passive dogs. They should be treating a barrier after the fashion of their old country, leaping against it, barking and scratching the nicely painted door. He bounded up the last little hill to set them as an example, for he was still full of the rebellion of the world. But he found no door to leap against. He could see beyond the entrance dear masses of people, yet no dog crossed the threshold. They continued in their patient ring, their gaze upon the winding road. He now advanced cautiously to examine the gate. It occurred to him that it must be fly time in this region, and he did not wish to make himself ridiculous before all these strangers by trying to bolt through an invisible mesh like the one that had baffled them when he was a little chap. Yet there were no screens, and despair entered his soul. What bitter punishment these poor beasts must have suffered before they learned to stay on the side of the arch that led to human beings. What had they done on earth to merit this? Stolen bones troubled his conscience, runaway days, sleeping in the best chair until the key clicked in the lock. These were sins. Thank you. No worries, demon. No worries. At that moment, an English bull terrier, white with liver-colored spots and a jaunty manner, approached him, snuffling in a friendly way. No sooner had the bull terrier smelt his collar than he fell to expressing his joy at meeting him. The Arundel's reserve was quite thawed by this welcome, though he did not know just what to make of it. I know you, exclaimed the bull terrier, adding inconsequently, What's your name? Tam O'Shanter. They call me Tammy, was the answer, with a pardonable break in the voice. I know them, said the bull terrier. Nice folks. But best ever, said the Arundel, trying to be nonchalant and scratching a flea which was not there. I don't remember you. When did you know them? About 14 tags ago, when they were first married. We keep track of time here by the license tags. I had 4. This was my first and only one. You were before my time, I guess. He felt young and shy. Come for a walk and tell me about them, was his new friend's invitation. Aren't we allowed in there? Asked Tam, looking toward the gate. Sure. You can go in whenever you want to. Some of us do it first, but we don't stay. Like it better outside? No, it isn't that. Then why are all you fellows hanging around here? Any old dog can see it's better beyond the arch. You see, we're waiting for our folks to come. The Arundel grasped it at once and nodded understandingly. I felt that way when I came along the road. It wouldn't be what it's supposed to be without them. it wouldn't be the perfect place. Not to us, said the bull terrier. Fine. I've stolen bones, but it must be that I've been forgiven if I'm to see them here again. It's the great good place, all right. But look here, he added as a new thought struck him. Do they wait for us? The older inhabitant coughed in slight embarrassment. I'm already sobbing. Yeah, I think I'm piecing together what's going on here. The humans couldn't do that very well. It wouldn't be the thing to have them hang around outside just for just a dog. Not dignified. Quite right, agreed Tam. I'm glad they go straight to their mansions. I'd hate to have them missing me as I am missing them, he sighed. But then, they wouldn't have to wait so long. Oh well, they're getting on. Don't be discouraged, comforted the terrier. And in the meantime, it's like a big hotel in summer, watching the new arrivals. See, there's something doing now. All the dogs were aroused to excitement by a little figure making its way uncertainly up the last slope. Half of them started to meet it, crying about in a loving, eager pack. Look out! Don't scare it, cautioned the older animals, while word was passed to those farthest from the gate. Quick! Quick! A baby's come! Before they had entirely assembled, however, a gaunt yellow hound pushed through the crowd, gave one sniff at the small child, and with a yelp of joy, crouched at its feet. The baby embraced the hound in recognition, and the two moved toward the gate. Just outside, the hound stopped to speak to an aristocratic St. Bernard who had been friendly. Sorry to leave you, old fellow, he said, but I'm going to watch over the kid. You see, I'm all she has up here. The bull terrier looked at the Arndale for appreciation. That's the way we do it, he said proudly. Yes, but the Arndale put his head on one side in perplexity. Yes, but what? Asked the guide. The dogs that don't have any people. The nobody's dogs. That's the best of all. Oh, everything is thought out here. Crouch down. You must be tired, and watch, said the bull terrier. Soon they spied another small form making the turn in the road. He wore a Boy Scout's uniform, but he was a little fearful, for all that, so new was this adventure. The dogs rose again and snuffled, but the better groomed of the circle held back, and in their place, a pack of odds and ends of the company ran down to meet him. The Boy Scout was reassured by their friendly attitude, and after petting them impartially, he chose an old-fashioned black and tan, and the two passed in. Tam looked questioningly. They didn't know each other, he exclaimed, but they've always wanted to. That's one of the boys who used to beg for a dog, but his father wouldn't let him have one. So all our strays just wait for just such little fellows to come along. Every boy gets a dog, and every dog gets a master. I expect the boy's father would like to know that now, commented the Ardale. No doubt he thinks quite often, I wish I'd let him have a dog. The bull terrier laughed. You're pretty near the earth yet, aren't you? Tam admitted it. I've a lot of sympathy with fathers and with boys, having them both in the family and the mother as well. The bull terrier leaped up in astonishment. You don't mean to say they keep a boy? Sure. Greatest boy on earth. 10 this year. Well, well, this is news. I wish they'd kept a boy when I was there. The Ardale looked at his new friend intently. See here, who are you? He demanded, but the other hurried on. I used to run away from them just to play with a boy. They'd punish me, and I always wanted to tell them it was their fault for not getting one. Who are you anyway? Repeated Tam, talking all this interest in me too. Whose dog were you? You've already guessed, but I see it in your quivering snout. I'm the old dog that had to leave them about 10 years ago. Their old dog Bully? Yes, I'm Bully. They nosed each other with deeper affection, then strolled about the glades, shoulder to shoulder. Bully the more eagerly pressed for news. Tell me, how are they getting along? Very well indeed. They've paid for the house. I suppose you occupy the kennel? No. They said they couldn't stand it to see another dog in your old place. Bully stopped to howl gently. That touches me. It's generous in you to tell it. To think they missed me. For a little while they went on in silence, but as evening fell, and the light from the golden streets inside the city gave the only glow to the scene, Bully grew nervous and suggested that they go back. We can't see so well at night, and I'd like to be pretty close to the path, especially toward morning. Tam assented. And I will point them out. You might not know them just at first. Oh, we know them. Sometimes the babies have so grown up they're rather hazy in their recollection of how we look. They think we're bigger than we are, but you can't fool us dogs. It's understood, Tam cunningly arranged. Then when he or she arrives, you'll sort of make them feel at home, while I wait for the boy. That's the plan, assented Bully, kindly. And if by any chance the little fellow should come first, there's been a lot of them this summer. Of course, you'll introduce me? I shall be proud to do it. And so, with muzzles sunk between their paws, and with their eyes straining down the pilgrim's road, they wait outside the gate. The end. I'll give you a little moment to just wipe away the tears. I'm feeling a little verklempt. Witch Abigail, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the spooky zone. That was like it's so sad. At the same time, it's also kind of, it's meant to be a, how do I put this? A cheerful kind of sad, you know? It's like, I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't really know what I was expecting with this story. But the fact that these are all dogs that have left the moral coil, and they're just waiting for their human counterpart so that they can pass through the gates onto the other side. Yeah, bittersweet, that's a good way to describe it. That's a very good way to describe it. It's just like, it's... this was supposed to be a night of terror, not feels. This was supposed to be a night of terror, not a night of feels. Who put all of these feels in my horror story? I love that dogs didn't have owners to go with kids. Yeah, the fact that there was a system in place for the strays that never had anyone as well. That was the sweetest. That's the sweetest part. That's the part I really enjoy. It's like, as I mentioned, every boy gets a dog, and I like that. I like that little detail. Ed C400, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the spooky zone. Sorry, we're getting ourselves together after a sudden influx of feels. There's onions next to me, that's all. That's all. I'm not crying, you're crying. Oh. Those are good dogs and they'll get their human soon. Absolutely. They will absolutely get their human soon enough. It may take a little bit of time, but they will get their human soon. Oh man. Oh, that was at the gate. Oh jeez. Was not expecting that. Was not expecting that. Someone put tears in my eyes. It's a terrible day for rain. Oh man. Oh man. I like that. I really like that one. It's one of those feel-good stories, you know? It's one of those feel-good stories. It's actually funny. I was watching for anyone, I'm not sure how many people in chat right now are familiar with Overly Sarcastic Productions. I actually posted one of the most recent video in the Discord server, actually, and they it's basically, there's two people, Blue and Red. Blue goes over a lot of historical aspects, and Red talks a lot about like story tropes and fictional, right, and fiction concepts. And today they uploaded a video today talking about the personification of death, and it kind of turned into a little bit of a therapy session as a way, and talking about the different portrayals of death and how everyone is basically, how do I put this, is a way of the different portrayals of death is kind of a way to try to put an understanding or put a face on something that people to this day still have a hard time trying to understand, because it's like we know what death is, but we still don't know what comes after death. Like, there's a bunch of religious groups out there that think they know what happens after death, but the truth of the matter is no one really knows what happens after we pass from this mortal coil, you know? And it's one of those things that everyone comes to terms with at some point or another, or at least most people come to terms with at one point. And it's still like terrifying to think about, for sure. But it's one of those things that has to cross someone's mind at some point or another. It's interesting to think. It's one of those things that's worth thinking about. And this story has a nice little viewpoints of that, where we have this scenario of these canines that have already passed on, and they're waiting for their respective humans to come over to join them. You know, it's a sweeter. Grim, hello! Thank you so much for the raid. How are you doing? Welcome. Thank you so much, Grim. How you doing? Damien, how are you doing as well? Go ahead and shout you out. What were you up to? What were you up to, buddy? Movie trivia. Oh, right. You had your movie night tonight, didn't you? You had your movie night tonight. What were you watching, out of curiosity? What were you watching? Oh, how are y'all doing? Marley, hello to you as well. Wooden Lucian, first time here. Welcome. And Dago Lago. I feel like I'm mispronouncing that. Dago. I feel like it's Dago. Let me know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Welcome on in. Welcome, Raiders. I am Sawin. I am a Wraith VTuber specializing in horror and horror adjacent content. And tonight is Horror Story ASMR. We actually just finished our third story of the evening, At the Gate. A very bittersweet tale of pet dogs that have already that have already passed away, just waiting at a gate for their human partner to come in, for their human boys to come on in, collect them, so that they can all pass through to the beyond. It's a very bittersweet tale. Got it right the first time. Hey, I'm glad. We're actually... See, I probably shouldn't push myself too hard, because it's been a bit since I last did one of these. But I did mention that we had an Edgar Allan Poe story readied for this evening because I loves me some Edgar Allan Poe. So we got one more story that I'd love to do this evening. So y'all came in at a pretty good time. Y'all came in at a great time. And Wooden Lucian, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the spooky zone. Okay. Oh, that's a cool little emote there. Lurk emote. I should try to see if I can get something like that in. That'd be a good thing to set as a follower emote. No worries, Grim. No worries, Grim. Enjoy your lurk. If you need to get a snack, get something to drink, need to do a stretch, absolutely be sure to do so. Never forget post-stream self-care. Thank you so much again for the raid. I was gonna say, I lost my train of thought. As for the people that are new here, basically Horror Story ASMR is where I read a collection of short horror stories in the same dulcet tones that you're currently hearing right now. And if you want to grab a blanket, cozy yourself up, get nice and snug, make sure you're comfy, and get ready for some tales of terror and fright. As I mentioned before, I think we're probably going to go ahead and do our last story, which is, of course, by Edgar Allan Poe. This one is called The Black Cat. And this is one I don't think I've actually read myself, nor does it get as much attention as some of Poe's other works. Although there is a movie that was made that was based off of this. I believe it was released in the 60s, I want to say. I have it written down on my list of films that eventually would want to put on for cemetery cinema. But for the most part, I'm not too familiar with this one, if I'm being perfectly honest. So I wanted to go ahead and put this on the docket because it seemed like a fun one to read through, especially since we are in October. It is the Halloween season after all, and I do have 2 black cats of my own. Hello, including one that's walking around me right now. Hello, Midnight. How are you doing? Are you getting restless? Hey, Lois. Think I remember this one? Yeah, like, it's one of those stories that doesn't get as much play as the ones like The Telltale Heart, for example, or The Cask of Amontillado. So, I'm curious. I'm very curious about this one. Alright. Let's go and get started, shall we? Well, at Midnight, you are... Okay, do you need to go out, Midnight? Sorry, one sec. Let me tend to my cat real quick. One moment, please. Okay, I guess she did want to go back out. Midnight did want to go back out. Because she's a silly kitty. She's a silly kitty. Alright, let's go. There we go. There's some of your ASMR sound triggers. Just go. There's some ASMR sound triggers for you. Oh, man. One of these days I'd like to be able to get one of those 3D spatial audio microphones, the ones with the weird creepy ears on them. I feel like Though I've heard good things about them for like actually getting the left and right side of the ear audio, like that stereo audio, and you know. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, gotta update this to. Sec. Okay. There we go. All right. Let us begin, shall we? This is the Black Cat. For the most wild, yet most homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief. Mad indeed would I be to expect it, in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet mad am I not, and verily surely do I not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburthen my soul. My immediate purpose is to place before the world, plainly, succinctly, and without comment, a series of mere household events. In their consequences, these events have terrified, have tortured, have destroyed me. Yet, I will not attempt to expound them. To me, they have presented little but horror. To many, they will seem less terrible than Baroque's. Hereafter, perhaps, some intellect may be found which will reduce my phantasm to the commonplace. Some intellect more calm, more logical, and far less excitable than my own, which will perceive, in the circumstances I deal with awe, nothing more than an ordinary succession of very natural causes and effects. Oh, one sec. Corey is now what now? One moment, please. I think both of my cats felt something was off, and they opted to not stick around for this story. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Continuing on. Yeah, peak cat time. From my infancy, I was noted for the docility and humanity of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions. I was especially fond of animals, and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these, I spent most of my time, and never was so happy as when feeding and caressing them. This peculiarity of character grew with my growth, and in my manhood, I derived from it one of my principal sources of pleasure. To those who have cherished an affection for a faithful and sagacious dog, I need hardly be at the trouble of explaining the nature or the intensity of the gratification thus derivable. There is something in the unselfish and self-sacrificing love of a brute which goes directly to the heart of him who has had frequent occasion to test the paltry friendship and gossamer fidelity of mere man. I married early, and was happy to find in my wife a disposition not incongenial with my own. Observing my partiality for domestic pets, she lost no opportunity of procuring those of the most agreeable kind. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This latter was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black and sagacious to an astonishing degree. In speaking of his intelligence, my wife, who at heart was not a little tinctured with superstition, made frequent allusion to the ancient popular notion, which regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Not that she was ever serious upon this point, and I mention the matter at all for no better reason than that it happens, just now, to be remembered. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he attended me wherever I went about the house. It was even with difficulty that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general temperament and character, through the instrumentality of the fiend intemperance, had, I blush to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. I grew day by day more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. I suffered myself to use intemperate language to my wife. At length, I even offered her personal violence. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my disposition. I not only neglected, but ill-used them. For Pluto, however, I still retained sufficient regard to restrain me from maltreating him, as I made no scruple of maltreating the rabbits, the monkey, or even the dog, when by accident or through affection they came in my way. But my disease grew upon me, for what disease is like alcohol, and at length even Pluto, who was now becoming old and consequently somewhat peevish, even Pluto began to experience the effects of my ill temper. One night, returning home, much intoxicated from one of my haunts about town, I fancied that the cat avoided my presence. I seized him when, in his fright at my violence, he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body, and a more than fiendish malevolence, gin-nurtured, thrilled every fiber of my frame. I took from my waistcoat pocket a penknife, opened it, grasped the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut one of its eyes from the socket. I blush, I burn, I shudder while I pen the damnable atrocity. Nice guy. Thank you for the hydrate, Marin. Yeah, quick breather from the. I did not know there was going to be animal violence here, so. How you doing, Marin? Thank you so much for swinging on by. Hope you're having a terrifyingly pleasant time zone. Welcome, welcome. Oh, hell of a story to come in on. Tired but surviving. Mood. Very much a mood. I know the feeling. I absolutely know that feeling. That's why the cats fled from this story. Yep, I do not blame them. I do not blame the kitties for not wanting to be around for this. Moving on. One night, oh wait, no, read this part already. When reason returned with the morning, when I had slept off the fumes of the night's debauch, I experienced a sentiment half of horror, half of remorse for the crime of which I had been guilty. But it was, at best, a feeble and equivocal feeling, and the soul remained untouched. I again plunged into excess, and soon drowned in wine all memory of the deed. I've missed the horror stories. It has been a bit since we've done these, and I've missed doing these too. It's just been so busy with so many other things. Also, it's I've been trying to be better at vetting the stories that I read beforehand to make sure that they don't drag on for too long. Or there's no like problematic elements or anything like that. In the meantime, the cat slowly recovered. The socket of the lost eye presented, it is true, a frightful appearance, but he no longer appeared to suffer any pain. He went about the house as usual, but, as might be expected, fled in extreme terror at my approach. I had so much of my old heart left as to be at first grieved by this evident dislike on the part of a creature which had once so loved me. But this feeling soon gave place to irritation, and then came, as if to my final and irrevocable overthrow, the spirit of perverseness. Of this spirit philosophy takes no account, yet I am not more sure that my soul lives, that I am the perverseness is, that I am that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses of the human heart, one of the indivisible primary faculties, or sentiments, which give direction to the character of man. Who has not, 100 times, found himself committing a vile or a silly action for no other reason than because he knows he should not? Have we not a perpetual inclination, in the teeth of our best judgment, to violate that which is law, merely because we understand it to be such? This spirit of perverseness, I say, came to my final overthrow. It was this unfathomable longing to the soul to vex itself, to offer violence to its own nature, to do wrong for the wrong's sake only, that urged me to continue and finally consummate the injury I had inflicted upon the unoffending brute. One morning, in cool blood, I slipped a noose about its neck and hung it to the limb of a tree. Hung it with the tears streaming from my eyes and with the bitterest remorse in my heart. Hung it because I knew that it had loved me and because I felt it had given me no reason of offense. Hung it because I knew that in doing so I was committing a sin, a deadly sin that would so jeopardize my immortal soul as to place it, if such a thing were possible, even beyond the reach of the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God. On the night of the day on which this cruel deed was done, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. The curtains of my bed were in flames. The whole house was blazing. It was with great difficulty that my wife, a servant, and myself made our escape from the conflagration. The destruction was complete. My entire worldly wealth was swallowed up, and I resigned myself thenceforward to despair. I am above the weakness of seeking to establish a sequence of cause and effect between the disaster and the atrocity, but I am detailing a chain of facts. I wish not to leave even a possible link imperfect. On the day succeeding the fire, I visited the ruins. The walls, with one exception, had fallen in. This exception was found in a compartment wall, not very thick, which stood about the middle of the house, and against which had rested the head of my bed. The plastering had here, in great measure, resisted the action of the fire, a fact which I attributed to its having been greatly spread. About this wall a dense crowd were collected, and many persons seemed to be examining a particular portion of it with very minute and eager attention. The words strange, singular, and other similar expressions excited my curiosity. I approached and saw, as if graven in bas-relief upon the white surface, the figure of a gigantic cat. The impression was given with an accuracy truly marvelous. There was a rope about the animal's neck. When I first beheld this apparition, for I could scarcely regard it as less, my wonder and my terror were extreme. But at length reflection came to my aid. The cat, I remembered, had been hung in the garden adjacent to the house. Upon the alarm of fire, this garden had been immediately filled by the crowd, by some one of whom the animal must have been cut from the tree and thrown through an open window into my chamber. This had probably been done with the view of arousing me from sleep. The falling of other walls had compressed the victim of my cruelty into the substance of the freshly spread plaster, the lime of which, with the flames and the ammonia from the carcass, had then accomplished the portraiture as I saw it. Although I thus readily accounted to my reason, if not altogether to my conscience, for the startling fact just detailed, it did not the less fail to make a deep impression upon my fancy. For months, I could not rid myself of the phantasm of the cat, and, during this period, there came back into my spirit a half sentiment that seemed, but was not, remorse. I went so far as to regret the loss of the animal, and to look about me among the vile haunts which I now habitually frequented for another pet of the same species, and of somewhat similar appearance, with which to supply its place. One night, as I sat, half stupefied in the den of more than infamy, my attention was suddenly drawn to some black object reposing upon the head as one of the immense hogsheads of gin or of rum which constituted the chief furniture of the apartment. I had been looking steadily at the top of this hogshead for some minutes, and what now caused me surprise was the fact that I had not sooner perceived the object thereupon. I approached it and touched it with my hand. It was a black cat, a very large one, fully as large as Pluto, and closely resembling him in every respect but one. Pluto had not a white hair upon any portion of his body, but this cat had a large, although indefinite, splotch of white, covering nearly the whole region of the breast. Upon my touching him, he immediately arose, purred loudly, rubbed against my hand, and appeared delighted with my notice. This, then, was the very creature of which I was in search. I at once offered to purchase it of the landlord, but this person made no claim to it, knew nothing of it, had never seen it before. Oh. Panda. Rest is up to you, my favorite spooky friend.
Panda, thank you so much for redeeming Spooky Aura during this particularly spooky month. I thank you so much for the support as well. It is very much appreciated. And I hope you're enjoying the stories.
Thank you for redeeming that. Don't know if I can do this one, but I want to know if the narrator is rightfully offed. This is a rough one. I did not know it was going to get this rough, but I'm also very curious to see where this goes, so I can understand the apprehension. I can fully understand the apprehension if you need to step away for a moment. That is perfectly reasonable. But let's see where this goes. And about this new cat that our narrator is picking up. Always happy to see my favorite button left in there. It seemed appropriate to have on for horror story ASMR. Let's see. Here we go. I continued my caress, and when I prepared to go home, the animal evinced a disposition to accompany me. I permitted it to do so, occasionally stooping and patting it as I proceeded. When it reached the house, it domesticated itself at once, and became immediately a great favorite with my wife. For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. This was just the reverse of what I had anticipated, but I know not how or why it was. Its evident fondness for myself rather disgusted and annoyed. By slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyance rose into the bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature. A certain sense of shame and the remembrance of my former deed of cruelty prevented me from physically abusing it. I did not, for some weeks, strike or otherwise violently ill-use it, but gradually, very gradually, I came to look upon it with unutterable loathing, and to flee silently from its odious presence, as from the breath of a pestilence. I'm a cat addict. If anyone did anything to a cat, I'd beat their ass for 30 minutes. It would be like the curb stomp scene from part 5 of JoJo's. Basically, that's what I'm imagining for anyone that brings harm to our little furry friends. What added, no doubt, to my hatred of the beast was the discovery on the morning after I brought it home that, like Pluto, it also had been deprived of one of its eyes. This circumstance, however, only endeared it to my wife, who, as I've already said, possessed in a high degree that humanity of feeling which had once been my distinguishing trait, and a source of many of my simplest and purest pleasures. With my aversion to this cat, however, its partiality for myself seemed to increase. It followed my footsteps with a pertinacity which it would be difficult to make the reader comprehend. Whenever I sat, it would crouch beneath my chair or spring upon my knees, covering me with its loathsome caresses. If I arose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly throw me down, or fastening its long and sharp claws in my dress, clamber in this manner to my breast. At such times, although I longed to destroy it with a blow, I was yet withheld from so doing, partly by a memory of my former crime, but chiefly, let me confess it at once, by absolute dread of the beast. This dread was not exactly a dread of physical evil, and yet I should be at a loss how otherwise to define it. I am almost ashamed to own, yes, even in this felon's cell, I am almost ashamed to own that the terror and horror with which the animal inspired me had been heightened by one of the nearest chimeras it would be possible to conceive. My wife had called my attention more than once to the character of the mark of white hair of which I have spoken, and which constituted the sole visible difference between the strange beast and the one I had destroyed. The reader will remember that this mark, although large, had been originally very indefinite, but by slow degrees nearly imperceptible, in which for a long time my reason struggled to reject as fanciful, it had, at length, assumed a rigorous distinctiveness of outline. It was now the representation of an object that I shuddered to name, and for this, above all, I loathed and dreaded, and would have rid myself of the monster had I dared. It was now, I say, the image of a hideous, of a ghastly thing, of the gallows. Oh, mournful and terrible engine of horror and of crime, and of agony, and of death. And now was I indeed wretched beyond the wretchedness of mere humanity, and a brute beast whose fellow I had contemptuously destroyed, a brute beast to work out for me. For me, a man, fashioned in the image of the high God, so much of insufferable woe. Alas, neither by day nor by night knew I the blessing of rest anymore. During the former, the creature left me no moment alone, and in the latter, I started hourly from dreams of unutterable fear to find the hot breath of the thing upon my face and its vast weight, an incarnate nightmare that I had no power to shake off, incumbent internally upon my heart. Beneath the pressure of torments such as these, the feeble remnant of the good within me succumbed. Evil thoughts became my sole intimates, the darkest and most evil of thoughts. The moodiness of my usual temper increased a hatred of all things and of all mankind, while from a sudden, frequent, and ungovernable outburst of a fury to which I now blindly abandoned myself, my uncomplaining wife, alas, was the most usual and the most patient of sufferers. One day, she accompanied me upon some household errand into the cellar of the old building which our poverty compelled us to inhabit. The cat followed me down the steep stairs, and nearly throwing me headlong, exasperated me to madness. Uplifting an axe and forgetting, in my wrath, the childish dread which had hitherto stayed my hand, I aimed a blow at the animal, which, of course, would have proved instantly fatal, had it descended as I wished. But this blow was arrested by the hand of my wife. Goaded by the interference into a rage more than demoniacal, I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe in her brain. She fell dead upon the spot without a groan. Well, this story took a turn. This is a bit of a roller coaster over here. Holy shit. Corey, I hear you, but you're probably not going to want to be in the room for this. I hear you, Corey. You know what? Give me 1 sec. I'll let you all process what just transpired. One moment. I gave Corey some hugs and kisses. I'm going to be hugging my cat so hard tonight after this. Where were we? Oh, right, murder. This hideous murder accomplished, I set myself forthwith, and with entire deliberation, to the task of concealing the body. I knew that I could not remove it from the house, either by day or by night, without the risk of being observed by the neighbors. Many projects entered my mind. At one period, I thought of cutting the corpse into minute fragments and destroying them by fire. At another, I resolved to dig a grave for it in the floor of the cellar. Again, I deliberated about casting it into the well in the yard, about packing it in a box as if merchandise with the usual arrangements, and so getting a porter to take it from the house. Finally, I hit upon what I considered a far better expedient than either of these. I determined to wall it up in the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages are recorded to have walled up their victims. Yeah, need to love the babies. I will be sure to give the babies plenty of love after stream this evening. For a purpose such as this, the cellar was well adapted. Its walls were loosely constructed and had lately been plastered throughout with a rough plaster, which the dampness of the atmosphere had prevented from hardening. Moreover, in one of the walls was a projection caused by a false chimney or fireplace that had been filled up and made to resemble the red of the cellar. I made no doubt that I could readily displace the bricks at this point, insert the corpse, and wall the hole up as before, so that no eye could detect anything suspicious. And in this calculation, I was not deceived. By means of a crowbar, I easily dislodged the bricks, and having carefully deposited the body against the inner wall, I propped it in that position, while, with little trouble, I relaid the whole structure as it originally stood. Having procured mortar, sand, and hair with every possible precaution, I prepared a plaster which could not be distinguished from the old, and with this, I very carefully went over the new brickwork. When I had finished, I felt satisfied that all was right. The wall did not present the slightest appearance of having been disturbed. The rubbish on the floor was picked up with the minutest care. I looked around triumphantly and said to myself, here at least then, my labor was not in vain. My next step was to look for the beast which had been the cause of so much wretchedness, for I had at length firmly resolved to put it to death. Had I been able to meet with it at the moment, there could have been no doubt of its fate, but it appeared that the crafty animal had been alarmed of the violence at my previous anger, and forebore to present itself in my present mood. It is impossible to describe or to imagine the blissful sense of relief which the absence of the detested creature occasioned in my bosom. It did not make its appearance during the night, and thus, for one night at least, since its introduction into the house, I soundly and tranquilly slept. I slept even with the burden of murder upon my soul. The second and third day passed, and still my tormentor came not. Once again, I breathed as a free man. The monster in terror had fled the premises forever. I should behold it no more. King, hello! King Wraith! Trying to see how long I could keep that going. How you doing, King? Thank you so much for the raid. This story is depressing. Oh, doing the Lord's work. How was Valorant? Oh, right. Tonight was your variety night, wasn't it? I believe tonight was your variety night, if I recall. Hope you had a good time. Thank you so much for the raid. Oh, hope the story is going good. I mean, it's gripping. It's absolutely terrifying. Well, I think right now the shoe that is waiting to be dropped is how is our narrator going to get what's coming to them. I believe that is the shoe that is currently waiting to be dropped. It is an experience. Clipping that, thank you. But thank you so much for the raid. Welcome, raiders. I am Salwin. I'm a Wraith VTuber specializing in horror and horror adjacent content. And tonight is Horror Story ASMR, where I read a collection of short horror stories in the same dulcet tones that you're hearing right now. We are reading through Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat. To kind of summarize how this story has gone so far, our protagonist, who apparently has a very severe drinking problem, did a heckin' murder on a black cat. A very uncomfortable murder, and several other things of violence towards it, in various drunken stupors. And now, another mostly black cat, save for a white patch on its chest that looks reminiscent of a gallows, has suddenly warmed up to him. Interesting note of connection here. Both the cat that was murdered and the current cat were also missing an eye. And our protagonist, in his another fit of rage, just murdered his wife and pulled a cask of Amontillado and holed her up inside of a wall, bricked it up, mortared it all together, and is now currently trying to pretend that absolutely nothing is wrong. Lovely individual this person is. Wifey did save the second cat. The wife did in fact save the second cat, although she got a very severe headache for her troubles. Oh, was good? Yeah, glad to hear. So if you need to get something to snack on, you need to get something to drink, need to stretch, absolutely be sure to do so. Never neglect post-stream self-care. And thank you again for the raid. Really appreciate it. Kitty description reminded me of my kitty. Yeah, go pet your kitties. Go pet your kitties. I'm definitely going to be petting mine after we finish up here. I'm definitely going to be petting my kitties after we finish here. For sure. For reals. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I think we're actually coming close to the end of the story, actually. We're actually getting close to the end of the story. Okay. Let's see. The second and third day passed, and still my tormentor came not. Once again, I breathed as a free man. The monster in terror had fled the premises forever. I should behold it no more. My happiness was supreme. The guilt of my dark deed disturbed me but little. Some few inquiries had been made, but these had been readily answered. Even a search had been instituted. But of course, nothing was to be discovered. I looked upon my future felicity as secured. Upon the fourth day of the assassination, a party of the police came, very unexpectedly, into the house. I proceeded again to make rigorous investigation of the premises. Secure, however, in the inscrutability of my place of concealment, I felt no embarrassment whatever. The officers bade me accompany them in their search. They left no nook or corner unexplored. At length, for the third or fourth time, they descended into the cellar. I quivered not a muscle. My heart beat calmly as that of one who slumbers in innocence. I walked the cellar from end to end, folded my arms upon my bosom, and roamed easily to and fro. The police were thoroughly satisfied and prepared to depart. The glee at my heart was too strong to be restrained. I burned to say if but one word by way of triumph, and to render doubly sure their assurance of my guiltlessness. "Gentlemen," I said at last, as the party ascended the steps, I delight to have allayed your suspicions. I wish you all health and a little more courtesy. By the by, gentlemen, this is a very well-constructed house. In the rabid desire to say something easily, I scarcely knew what I uttered at all. I may say, an excellently well-constructed house. These walls... Where are you going, gentlemen? These walls are solidly put together. And here, through the mere frenzy of bravado, I rapped heavily with a cane which I held in my hand upon that very portion of the brickwork behind which stood the corpse of my wife of my bosom. But may God shield and deliver me from the fangs of the arch-fiend. No sooner had the reverberation of my blows sunk into silence than I was answered by a voice from within the tomb, by a cry at first muffled and broken, like the sobbing of a child, and then quickly swelling into one long, loud, and continuous scream, utterly anomalous and inhuman. A howl, a wailing shriek, half of horror, half of triumph, such as might have arisen only out of hell, conjointly from the throats of the damned in their agony and of the demons that exult in the damnation. Of my own thoughts, it is folly to speak. Swooning, I staggered to the opposite wall. For one instant, the party upon the stairs remained motionless, through extremity of terror and awe. And the next, a dozen stout arms were toiling at the wall. It fell bodily. The corpse, already greatly decayed and clotted with gore, stood erect before the eyes of the spectators. Upon its head, with red extended mouth and solitary eye of fire, sat the hideous beast whose craft had seduced me into murder, and whose informing voice had consigned me to the hangman. I had walled the monster up within the tomb. The end. Get got. Indeed. Hey, happy ending. After all that, we got a happy ending. Good kitty indeed. Yeah. So this actually uses a lot of aspects and concepts that are seen in some of Poe's other works. Which did this come out? When did this come out? When was this published? Let's see. Okay, it was published in 1843. Was this before or after some of his other works? Let's see. Okay, there's no time frame. Cause we have an animal-based antagonist that's similar to the Raven. We have the murder and concealment of the body in a similar way to the Telltale Heart, and we have the hiding of the body in a similar manner to Cask of Amontillado. So there's a lot of different layers here. A kind of amalgamation of concepts. Kitty gets all the kisses after a bath, but many pets. Absolutely. I hope all of those police officers give that cat many pets. After, of course, executing. After, of course, they execute the dude. Of course. King, hello. How are you doing? What you're reading about? We actually just finished our fourth and... yeah, we're just crossing the 3-hour mark. Fourth and final story of the evening. The Black Cat. by Edgar Allan Poe. And I was actually just remarking on how it has a lot of Poe's signature concepts and themes. The narrator showing seemingly no guilt or remorse from his own actions, having a very major problem, especially with alcoholism, that causes him to fly into fits of rage, and that got worse and worse as time progressed. And eventually, the exposure of his crime through his own arrogance, no less, without not taking into account the fact that he didn't even realize that he had walled the cat in as well, and the cat was the one that exposed him. There's very many layers to this. I missed it. No worries, no worries. The VOD will still be there on Twitch, and the YouTube upload will be going up within a couple days. So if you missed any of the stories in tonight's session, you can go through, you can find that VOD and you can watch through it. Just don't read about Wendigo as someone who believes in it. It's best you don't say its name. Well, fuck, I just did. Well, fuck me, I guess. But I am familiar about that creature in particular. Let's see. Okay, Black Cat was published in 1843. Publication was using the temporary title. It's reprinted. Okay. Yeah. And yeah, there's the analysis. Similar to the Telltale Heart. The narrator, yeah, the narrator is of questionable sanity. Yeah, you get that notion very much right at the beginning when our narrator goes into great lengths to mention that reasonable enough individual at some occasions, but as soon as he starts getting into the bottle, that's when he starts getting into increasing aggression, and it never got addressed. It never got addressed until it resulted in just straight up murder. It's odd to not be drinking coffee watching your stream. Should have been asleep hours ago to celebrate my best friend's birthday today in the morning with a trip to a candy factory that sells moonshine flavored taffy and a tasting at the brewery next door to it. That sounds like a lovely day. That sounds like a lovely day, actually. Edgar Allan definitely had some interesting takes on things. Oh, his exploration on the human psyche is always fascinating, because each of his stories goes over like all of the antagonists and protagonists of his stories all exhibit some level of mental instability, but the protagonists themselves describe their actions through a level of clarity that they're not even aware of most of the time. So it's always fascinating how Poe explores some of these themes, you know? It's part of what I enjoy about his work so much. That was a very rough story, especially that first part. So I apologize for the roughness of it. Did he die? Oh, I am very much assuming that he got. Oh, you just came back? Oh, no worries. Yeah, basically after he did a heckin' murder and hid the body, the police were investigating the home, and similar to the Telltale Heart, yeah, he was feeling very, very full of himself, but he did not realize that he had walled the cat in with the corpse, and when he struck the wall with his cane, that woke the cat up, and and it made a very large, near demonic howl, encouraging the officers to open up the wall and find the body with the cat nearby it. So I would imagine that he himself was very quickly sent to the gallows. So I think we can rest easy knowing that he very much paid for his crimes. Exactly. Don't fuck with cats. Do not fuck with cats. And we were actually just talking about how it borrows certain elements from his other stories. And it's very, if anything, this person is possibly the most unhinged narrator in most of his works. Like, animal cruelty, on top of murder, probably he's up there. The narrator here is absolutely up there with some of the most unhinged narrators in Poe's works. Very much up there. But yeah, apologies for the first half. That first portion of the story was very rough. I understand. I can totally understand that first part made people uncomfortable. But at the very least, we got a very satisfying conclusion out of it. We got a very satisfying conclusion. Most murderers start with animals, one of the big signs. That is very true. That is very true. Perhaps that was intended. Perhaps that was what Poe was looking to accomplish, to establish just how bereft of morals the narrator was in this instance. Perhaps that was what he was going for, by using that as an example of just how absolute maidenless behavior he was exhibiting. There we go. Go ahead and put this away. There we go. Thank you all for coming out for Horror Story ASMR this evening, and it was a very, very fun time. We got some very fun stories. Come here, Corey. I'm going to give you many hugs. I'm going to give you all the hugs. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Thank you all for coming out for this. Again, I know it has been a while since we last did one of these, but I enjoyed myself, and I hope you all enjoyed yourselves as well. And I hope you enjoyed the collection of stories that were chosen for this particular evening. All the hugs. Where is the raid train brought me? Hello, Horror Queen Harley. Hello, how are you doing? Oh, I'm not sure which raid you came in on, but I'm glad that you stuck around. Your model is amazing. Thank you so much. That is very much appreciated. Yeah, we just wrapped up we finished our last story of the evening for this month's Horror Story ASMR. And I think we can go ahead and close things down here for the night. Oh, and Horror Queen Harley, thank you so much for the follow as well. Welcome to the spooky zone. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, we'll go ahead and close things down here for the evening. Thank you all so much for hanging out. As far as next week's streams, I did mention that tomorrow, Saturday, I will not be streaming on my end, but I will be hanging out with the Valdi and some other friends, and we'll be hanging out with her for her birthday charity stream. So be sure to swing on by for that. Give Valdi lots of love and support. She's raising money for Gamers Outreach. We raised money for them ourselves over the summer. They are a very good charity that work to bring gaming kiosks for kids in hospitals, and they do very good work. Have a lovely evening. Thank you. You all take care as well. Be sure to stick around. Be sure to stick around, so that we can see if we can find someone to raid ourselves. horror stories and saw when followed. Hey, let's go. Great stream. Thanks for having us. Hey, Core. I'm assuming you've been lurking for a bit. I'm assuming you've been lurking. Thank you for hanging out as well. Hope you're also having a terrifyingly pleasant time zone. Definitely check that out tomorrow. Absolutely, absolutely. Oh. Enjoy your time zone. Hopefully catch another stream soon. Absolutely. My next stream is hopefully this week has been weird in terms of stream schedules. Because a lot of stuff has been going on. Next week should be back to regular schedule. And I believe Monday, let me see. What do I have on Monday? Ooh, that's right. So every gaming day in October has been a different horror game. And for Monday, I got a doozy planned. A bit of a classic, if you will. Very, very much a classic. So definitely be sure, if you're a fan of like classic horror FPS games, be sure to swing on by for that. And of course, you can always follow me on Twitter, Blue Sky, as well as join the Discord server as well for any additional updates. You're very relaxing to listen to. Thanks for the stories. That is very good to hear. Oh, thank you so much. That makes me glad. That makes me very glad to hear. Oh. Just wait till he watches another retro horror movie. Actually, next week is also Cemetery Cinema, I believe. And for next week's movie offering, speaking of classic horror movies, we will be watching the 1925 silent film adaptation of The Phantom of the Opera. So that'll be next Friday, so be sure to swing on by for that as well. And I'll be sure to provide other updates as they come in. FNAF comes out next week. Does it? Does it come out next week? I thought it was already out. I have not really been paying a whole lot of attention to that, if I'm being perfectly honest. But for now, we'll go ahead and close things. We'll see if we can find someone to raid. That is our raid message. I'll go ahead and play the outro sequence while I look to see if I can find someone. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for hanging out. Don't forget to take care of yourselves. Be good to each other. Give your cats hugs. If you have a cat, be sure to give them plenty of hugs. Yes, I hear you, Corey. Yes, I know. I will give you plenty of hugs in a second. Oh. Thank you for the great stream and the scary stories and the memories of when I first showed up. My spooky friend. I'm going to haunt myself in ghost jail and get some much needed sleep. Absolutely. Be sure to get plenty of rest. Oh. You all rest well, Panda, and you rest well as well, everybody.
And pleasant nightmares.
They're eating her! And then they're going to eat me! Oh my god!
What is it? What's wrong, sister?
You are curiously attractive for a fishman. So I've been told.
I don't know about it. I just don't know.
I kick ass for the Lord!
Take a look at this.